Can you imagine accidentally leaking classified war plans because someone hit the wrong name in a group chat? That's not a joke. That actually happened, with real officials, under Donald Trump's watch. And the best part? That wasn't even the most humiliating part of the week. Because when it comes to Trump, chaos isn't a side effect, it's the entire show. He's had public meltdowns over TV jokes, rage posted about paintings that didn't flatter him, and somehow convinced himself that he should be hosting one of the most elite cultural events in America, right after calling Hollywood the enemy of the people. But what's even more shocking, his own allies, some of the loudest Trump loyalists, are starting to break ranks. And the moment one of them dares to show even the slightest crack of disloyalty, Trump does what he always does. He explodes. So buckle up, because what you're about to see isn't just a highlight reel of awkward moments. It's a full-blown portrait of how power, paranoia, and pure ego can spiral into one disaster after another, with the whole world watching. And trust me, it gets messier with every minute. It started with a joke, a late-night punchline, nothing out of the ordinary, until Donald Trump heard it. Jimmy Kimmel, never one to hold back, made a snide remark about Trump's marriage, a quick jab, a cheap laugh, but Trump took it personally, and what followed wasn't just a clapback, it was a digital explosion. In the early hours of the morning, Trump jumped on Truth Social like a man on a mission, all caps, full rage mode. He called Kimmel washed up, desperate. He even hinted that the comedian had once begged to be invited to Trump's events. Whether that was true didn't seem to matter. What mattered was that Trump felt wounded, and like always, he struck back hard. But here's the thing. Kimmel didn't back down. He fired off another joke the very next night. The feud escalated. And suddenly what started as a comedy bit turned into a full-on public meltdown. Trump's reaction wasn't just disproportionate, it was revealing. Because no matter how powerful he claims to be, one late-night joke is all it takes to crack the surface. And while the internet was laughing, Trump was seething. But this wasn't the first time his ego got the best of him. And what happened next showed just how far he's willing to go to control the narrative. In one of his more baffling outbursts, Trump grabbed a microphone and confidently told America that the federal government was spending $8 million turning mice transgender. Yes, mice. Not veterans, not infrastructure. Mice. It sounded insane, because it was. But that didn't stop Trump from repeating it at rallies, interviews, and anywhere else he could stir outrage. And sure enough, the crowd ate it up. Gasps, boos, laughter. It didn't matter if it was true. It sounded scandalous, and that was enough. The truth? Scientists were studying transgenic mice, a standard tool in medical research used to understand human diseases. Nothing to do with gender identity, nothing to do with surgeries, just science. But Trump twisted it into a culture war punchline. And when fact-checkers called him out, did he back down? Not even close. He doubled down, said the media was lying, said the scientists were corrupt, said anyone who questioned him was part of the deep state. Even some of his own allies didn't know how to spin it. One advisor reportedly asked, "Can we at least pick a different animal next time?" It would have been funny if it weren't so disturbing, because this wasn't just a gaffe. It was a window into how Trump operates. Create confusion. Fire up the base. And when the facts don't match the story, just yell louder. But the next scandal made this one look almost harmless, because what came after involved real national security, and a text message that should have never been sent. It sounds like a parody, something out of a political comedy, but this one was very real and extremely dangerous. A group of senior Trump officials, including high-ranking defense and intelligence leaders, were quietly discussing a classified military operation, sensitive war planning, timelines, targets, the kind of information that's supposed to stay locked behind the tightest security clearances imaginable. And then, someone accidentally added a journalist to the group chat. That's right. A real-life, high-profile reporter from a national news outlet was sitting in the virtual room, watching these officials casually text about launching airstrikes, completely unaware that every detail was being leaked in real time. By the time anyone realized what happened, it was too late. The messages had been seen, documented, and confirmed. And instead of taking responsibility, the Trump team did what they always do: deny, deflect, and blame the media. One aide even tried to downplay it, saying it was just a minor mix-up, as if texting classified war plans to the wrong person was on par with sending your grocery list to the wrong group chat. But the internet wasn't buying it. Within hours, screenshots were turned into memes. People joked that Trump's team couldn't even handle a group lunch order, let alone a military strategy. One post read, "Bruh, did you just leak the nuclear codes?" Another, "Delete for everyone now." It was embarrassing, it was reckless, and it painted a brutal picture of just how chaotic things had become inside Trump's orbit. But believe it or not, the next scandal wasn't about war, it was about Vladimir Putin, and the humiliating relationship Trump just couldn't seem to escape. If there's one relationship that's baffled world leaders, infuriated U.S. allies, and humiliated Trump time and time again, it's his strange obsession with Vladimir Putin. From the very beginning, Trump treated Putin less like a geopolitical rival and more like a celebrity crush. While most presidents approached Russia with caution, Trump seemed starstruck, gushing over Putin's strength, his intelligence, even calling him a genius on live TV. And every time Putin threw him a compliment, no matter how backhanded, Trump melted. He'd glow, smile, even shift his policies. Diplomats cringed. Intelligence officials panicked. But Trump? He looked like a contestant getting a rose on a reality show. At one point, Putin denied interfering in U.S. elections, and Trump, standing next to him, publicly sided with Russia over his own intelligence agencies. That moment alone sparked global outrage and left America's allies wondering, who's really in charge here? The humiliation didn't stop there. While Putin tightened his grip on power, Trump repeatedly claimed they had a great relationship. And yet, behind closed doors, Putin continued expanding influence, undermining American interests and playing Trump like a fiddle. One former aide even admitted that Trump believed flattery was diplomacy. If someone praised him, they were a strong leader. If they criticized him, they were weak or a loser. And it wasn't just the media calling it out. Members of Trump's own team quietly confessed their embarrassment. But none of them dared say it publicly. Why? Because Trump doesn't take betrayal lightly, even if the only thing at stake is his ego. And if you thought this blind loyalty to power was embarrassing, wait until you hear what happened when Trump tried to force his way into one of the most elite events in America, an event that never wanted him in the first place. For years, Donald Trump went out of his way to bash the entertainment industry. He called actors overpaid phonies, claimed Hollywood was disgusting, and repeatedly insisted that award shows were rigged against real Americans. If a celebrity criticized him, he fired back instantly. If an artist won something, he questioned the legitimacy. He mocked the Oscars, boycotted the Emmys, and turned every award season into another battlefield in his never-ending culture war. So you'd think he couldn't care less about being part of those spaces, right? Wrong, because deep down, Trump didn't just want to be accepted by the elites. He wanted to be celebrated by them, applauded, idolized, and nothing symbolized that elite approval more than the Kennedy Center Honors, a formal black-tie event where America's greatest cultural icons are recognized in front of presidents, artists, and national leaders. And Trump wasn't just looking for a ticket to the party. According to multiple insiders, he wanted to host the entire show. The man who claimed Hollywood was a bunch of has-beens now believed he was the perfect person to stand center stage at one of the most prestigious cultural ceremonies in the country. The irony was staggering, the hypocrisy off the charts. But to Trump, that didn't matter. He saw the Kennedy Center as the spotlight he had always been denied, and he was determined to take it. When news of his ambitions leaked, the response was instant and brutal. Legendary performers refused to participate. Board members threatened to resign. One former honoree said, "If he hosts, I won't even turn the TV on." Trump, of course, saw that as betrayal, not by the artists, but by the institution itself. So what did he do? In classic Trump fashion, he fired most of the board, replaced them with hand-picked loyalists, many of whom had no experience in the arts, and then orchestrated a vote to install himself at the top. Just like that, the man who had mocked the entire event for years was suddenly in charge of it. He even floated the idea of renaming the program after himself. According to a leaked memo, someone close to Trump suggested calling it the American Cultural Achievement Awards, and yes, he loved it. But the absurdity didn't stop there. When asked in a private meeting what he'd bring to the show, Trump reportedly answered with one word: ratings. He promised it would be the biggest, most watched Kennedy Center Honors in history. He envisioned pyrotechnics, live musical numbers, celebrity walk-ons, and of course himself as the star of the night. Staffers were stunned. One insider later said, "It was like watching someone try to turn a Nobel Prize ceremony into a season finale of The Apprentice." Even with resistance mounting, Trump pushed harder. He wanted A-list celebrities. He demanded producers who had worked on award shows before. He even asked if it was possible to add a standing ovation clause to the show's format, meaning all guests would be expected to stand and clap during his opening monologue. Yes, seriously. But no matter how much power he grabbed or how many headlines he chased, the reality was unavoidable. He still wasn't welcome. Hollywood wasn't going to forget years of attacks. America's top artists weren't going to play along just because Trump held the microphone. The Kennedy Center Honors wasn't a Trump rally. It wasn't a political stunt. And it certainly wasn't a stage for personal rebranding. What it became instead was another chapter in Trump's long and awkward relationship with American fame. He didn't want to destroy the elite. He wanted to be the elite. He wanted the glitz, the applause, the slow-motion camera pans on national TV. But no matter how hard he tried to rewrite the narrative, the message from the entertainment world remained the same. You're not one of us. And Trump, despite all the power, all the spin, and all the noise, couldn't stand that. What happened next made things even worse. Because if he couldn't control the room, maybe he could control how history remembered him, and that's when a single painting pushed him over the edge. Every president receives one. Not a trophy, not a plaque, a portrait. A formal oil painting to be displayed in the halls of history, hung beside the likes of Washington, Lincoln, Kennedy. It's not just art, it's legacy. And for most presidents, it's an honor. But for Donald Trump, it was a disaster. The first time he saw the initial draft of his official presidential portrait, he reportedly stared at it in silence for a full 10 seconds, before exploding. He hated it. Absolutely hated it. The pose was wrong, the lighting was wrong, the face was wrong. But according to those in the room, the problem wasn't accuracy. The portrait actually captured him perfectly. His stature, his expression, the weight of the office in every line and brushstroke. That's exactly what Trump couldn't stand. He didn't want reality. He wanted a reinvention. One staffer said he kept pacing back and forth saying, "Why do I look tired? Why do I look so normal?" The artist, a renowned figure who had painted multiple world leaders, explained that the goal wasn't to flatter, but to reflect. That only made things worse. Trump asked if the artist could sharpen the jawline, widen the shoulders, and make him look more commanding. He wanted the background to glow, the flag to be bigger, the eyes to pop. He even asked if the portrait could include him mid-speech, with his hand raised like he was delivering a powerful quote. The artist said no. That's when Trump reportedly lost it. He called the work disrespectful, sloppy, and even accused the team behind it of deliberately trying to make him look weak. One person present during the tantrum said Trump genuinely believed the portrait was part of a coordinated effort to tarnish his image. He even questioned who approved the artist in the first place. Who hired this guy? Did Obama use him? Is this guy a Democrat? Staffers tried to reassure him. They said the painting would be received well by the public, that it showed strength and restraint, that it looked presidential. Trump fired back, "It looks like I'm about to apologize. I've never apologized for anything in my life." He then pulled out a folder filled with photos of himself at rallies, pointing at one in particular where he stood under bright lights, arms spread wide, a red tie catching the wind. "This is the energy people love. Why don't I look like that?" The room fell quiet, because the answer was obvious, but nobody wanted to say it. The portrait was supposed to show the president, not the performer. It was meant to mark a moment in history, not polish a brand. But Trump didn't want history. He wanted marketing. He wanted something he could hang in his golf club and point to with pride. Something that made him look like a war general or a founding father, or, as one insider put it, like a guy about to win a battle he never had to fight. There was even talk of asking the artist to start over, or replacing him entirely. When told that would cause a scandal, Trump reportedly shrugged and said, "Good. People need to know this is a joke." The portrait was eventually finished, but it never made a proper debut. No ceremony, no unveiling. It was quietly stored away, shielded from the press, and nowhere to be found in Trump's post-presidency offices. What was supposed to be a moment of legacy became a moment of vanity, because for Donald Trump the issue wasn't that the painting got it wrong, It's that it got it exactly right. And that truth, raw, unedited, and permanent, was something he just couldn't accept. But while he obsessed over shadows and skin tones, something far more dangerous was happening behind the scenes. Because while Trump raged about a painting, loyalty, the one thing he demanded above all else, was beginning to fracture, and one quiet act of dissent from inside his own circle would set off a chain reaction he never saw coming. It was bound to happen. When a political empire is held together by fear, ego, and blind loyalty, it doesn't take much for the seams to tear. For years, Trump demanded total obedience from everyone around him, lawmakers, aides, influencers, donors, and for years they delivered. But now, the cracks are showing, and the most dangerous part for Trump? They're coming from the inside. It started small. A few cautious statements here, a slight hesitation there, a refusal to repost one of his late-night Truth Social rants. But in Trump's world, silence is suspicion, and suspicion is betrayal. Then came the moment that really shook the foundation, when Senator J.D. Vance, one of Trump's most high-profile loyalists, dared to disagree. He didn't attack Trump. He didn't go on CNN. He didn't denounce the movement. All he did was raise a concern, privately, according to leaked messages, about a proposed military strike that didn't align with Trump's past messaging. That's it. That was the sin. Trump's inner circle immediately started whispering. Was Vance turning? Was he testing boundaries? Was he the next Pence? The paranoia spread fast. Trump didn't say much at first, but that's what made it worse, because in Trump's world, silence isn't mercy. It's the first stage of exile. Within days, Vance's name vanished from strategy meetings. MAGA influencers, who used to treat him like a rising star, began posting throwback clips of Vance criticizing Trump before he joined the movement. "Never forget where he came from," one post read. Another said, "Trust is earned daily." Translation? Watch your back. Because this wasn't just about Vance, it was a message to everyone else. If he can be cut off, so can you. Trump's team has always run on a brutal code: total loyalty or total banishment. Ask Mike Pence. Ask Jeff Sessions. Ask anyone who dared to show a flicker of independence and found themselves erased overnight. It doesn't matter how loyal you were yesterday. What matters is how obedient you are right now. And that's the pressure every Trump ally now lives under. They smile for the cameras. They echo the talking points. They praise his leadership on cue. But behind closed doors, the fear is real. Not fear of Democrats, not fear of the media. Fear of Trump himself. Because no one wants to be the next target. No one wants to be the next name in a Truth Social tirade, mocked with a dumb nickname, fed to the outrage machine, and tossed aside like they never mattered. One Republican strategist put it best. It's like living in a house where the fire alarm's always going off and nobody's allowed to talk about the smoke. The problem is, the smoke's getting thicker. Staffers are burned out. Lawmakers are walking on eggshells. Even donors are starting to whisper about Plan B, quietly meeting with new faces, exploring what life after Trump might look like. Not because they want to abandon him, but because deep down, they know the chaos isn't sustainable. Every week brings a new distraction, a new feud, a new meltdown, a new scandal that eats up airtime and energy while real problems go unsolved. And still, no one dares speak out publicly. Because Trump controls the spotlight, he controls the audience, he controls the outrage, and if you cross him, he'll turn that spotlight on you and burn you alive in front of millions. But even a spotlight can flicker, and the people closest to Trump can feel it. The loyalty isn't what it was in 2016. The fear isn't quite as sharp. The grip? It's still tight, but not unbreakable. Some are starting to test the boundaries. They ask questions in private. They delay public endorsements. They float statements like, "I support the agenda, not the drama." It's not rebellion, not yet. But it's a signal, a warning. The foundation is shifting. Trump knows it. You can see it in the way he lashes out more frequently, more desperately. He senses the hesitation and it terrifies him. Not because he's afraid of losing, he's afraid of being ignored. Because for Trump, the worst thing isn't criticism. It's irrelevance. And as more of his allies grow exhausted, distracted, or quietly disillusioned, the question becomes harder to ignore. How long can a movement built on absolute loyalty survive when even the loyal are starting to drift? But rather than face that question, Trump does what he always does. He changes the subject. He manufactures a new crisis. He picks a fresh target. And he spins the spotlight back on himself, because chaos for Trump isn't a weakness, it's a weapon. The next section, we're diving straight into the heart of that chaos, and the never-ending carousel of meltdowns, contradictions, and double standards that make Trump both impossible to ignore and increasingly impossible to defend. At this point, it's not even surprising. The public outbursts, the contradictions, the constant whirlpool of scandal, distraction, and ego. What once shocked the world has now become a routine. Trump spins out, the media scrambles, and everyone else just braces for whatever's next. Because with Donald Trump, chaos isn't a crisis, it's currency. This isn't new. It's not a fluke. It's the blueprint. And by now, everyone knows how it works. A damaging headline breaks. Trump goes on the offensive, raging at the fake news, threatening lawsuits he'll never file, and accusing someone somewhere of rigging everything against him. A former ally speaks out. He calls them a loser, a fraud, a traitor, sometimes all three, then swears he never liked them in the first place. He denies things he said on camera, contradicts positions he took last week, and when he's caught, really caught, he doesn't walk it back. He triples down. He floods the zone with noise, spins up new conspiracies, and dares anyone to call it what it is. A performance. Because that's the secret. None of it's about substance, it's about control. And one of Trump's most reliable tools has always been hypocrisy. He wears it like armor. He attacks others for things he does himself, then acts stunned when people point it out. He's tough on crime, until someone in his orbit gets indicted. He's pro-military, until a general criticizes him, then suddenly they're a disgrace. He's fiscally conservative, while running up the national debt by trillions. He's anti-elite, while living in a private resort surrounded by billionaires and gold chandeliers. It's not just hypocrisy, it's weaponized hypocrisy. And when anyone points it out, he turns the tables. He accuses them of being the hypocrites. He shifts blame, changes the subject, and drowns the truth in a flood of slogans and insults. It's how he survived scandals that would have sunk anyone else. It's how he kept his base locked in, even when reality screamed louder than the rhetoric. Because the show never stops. And the rules? They only apply to other people. Trump has built an entire political identity on being the exception to everything. Normal candidates release tax returns. He doesn't. Normal leaders admit when they're wrong. He won't. Normal people care when caught lying. He mocks anyone who brings it up. And it's not just the big lies. It's the small, petty ones. The crowd sizes, the weather, the ratings, the fast food spreads at White House events. He lies about things that don't matter just to keep the machine running, just to stay dominant in the conversation. Because for Trump, truth isn't the goal. Attention is. And the meltdowns, the late-night all-caps posts, the insults, they're all designed to keep the spotlight right where he wants it. Even when he's losing, he makes sure he's still the main character. He'll say something outrageous, wait for the backlash, then use the outrage as proof that he's the victim, that he's under attack, that you need to defend him because they're coming after you next. And people fall for it, over and over, because the moment someone stops clapping, the next meltdown begins. Even worse, he doesn't just feed the cycle, he drags everyone else into it. His staff has to explain away the contradictions. His allies have to act like it all makes sense. His supporters have to pretend that every tantrum is strategic, every rant is calculated, and every insult is just telling it like it is. It's a loyalty test, every single day. And the second someone flinches, he turns on them, loudly, publicly, vindictively. He wants total submission, not support. Praise without conditions, agreement without hesitation. And if you can't give him that, you're out. Yesterday's news. A backstabber. Even the people closest to him live in constant fear of becoming the next target. They see what happens to those who speak out, the mocking nicknames, the conspiracy theories. The loyalists turned into enemies the moment they think for themselves. It's why so many stay quiet, why they nod along, why they pretend the emperor's clothes are still sparkling red, white, and blue even when everyone sees the truth. But eventually, even the most loyal start to wear out. There's only so many times you can defend a contradiction, only so many spins you can put on an obvious lie, only so many hours in the day to keep up with the meltdowns, the pivots, the outrages. And that's what's happening now. People are exhausted. Allies are hesitating. Supporters are still loyal, but the cracks are visible. The enthusiasm is thinning. Because deep down, even they know this can't go on forever. You can only run from reality for so long before it catches up. And when it does, no amount of slogans, nicknames, or midnight rants will change what's waiting at the finish line. Trump built his brand on defying gravity, but even gravity gets the last word. At the heart of it all, Trump's story isn't really about governance. It's not about policy. It's not even about winning or losing. It's about attention and the unrelenting need to dominate every second of it. From the moment he descended that escalator, it was never just a campaign. It was a stage, a spotlight, a new season of an old show, repackaged with higher stakes and louder sound effects. And America, willing or not, became the audience. He didn't lead with plans. He led with slogans. He didn't offer substance. He offered a spectacle. He didn't campaign for unity. He campaigned for dominance. Every rally, every tweet, every late-night post wasn't about building bridges. It was about building brands. But the problem with turning everything into a show is that eventually the audience gets tired. You can only keep them hooked with cliffhangers and chaos for so long before they start to see the patterns. The same outrage, the same enemies, the same exaggerated crises that somehow always center around one man. And when they do, the illusion breaks. Even some of his most loyal followers are beginning to feel it. Not because they suddenly disagree with the message, but because they've grown numb to the mess. They're tired of defending the indefensible, tired of walking back statements he never really meant, tired of spinning his words into strategy when everyone knows he just said the first thing that popped into his head. And underneath that exhaustion is a quiet, dangerous realization. Maybe this isn't leadership at all. Maybe it never was. Maybe the chaos wasn't a price we paid for strength, it was a substitute for it. Maybe the noise wasn't proof of energy, it was a cover for the emptiness behind it. And maybe, just maybe, the most dangerous part of all this wasn't what Trump said or did, but what he taught a generation of Americans to believe. That cruelty is strength. That lies are just strategy. That rage is patriotism. That attention is victory. But attention fades. Every reality show has a final episode. Every character runs out of lines. Every performance ends with one question echoing through the silence. What was the point? And that's what Trump can't answer. Because for all the shouting, the scandals, the shattered norms, what did it all amount to? What changed for the better? What legacy was left behind that didn't come with a headline or a hashtag? He promised walls, delivered tweets. He promised to drain the swamp, then filled it with loyalists and insiders. He promised to fight for the forgotten, but only remembered them when the cameras were rolling. He didn't fix the system. He became it, louder, messier, and more theatrical than ever. And now, as the machine starts to slow, he's left doing what he always does when he feels it slipping. Yelling louder, pointing fingers, creating a new crisis before the last one even ends. Because if there's one thing Trump fears more than defeat, it's being forgotten. But history doesn't remember noise, it remembers impact. It doesn't reward spectacle, it rewards substance. And when the dust settles, when the headlines move on, when even his own allies stop showing up to defend the chaos, there will be no more rallies to fuel him, no more scapegoats to blame, no more lights to hide behind. Just the truth, that this wasn't a revolution. It was a rerun, one built on volume, not vision, on followers, not leadership, on fear, not strength. And in the end, that's what will be remembered. Not the applause, not the fury, not the show, but the silence that followed. Because every circus packs up, every act gets old, and eventually, even the loudest voice that fades into the background.